Welcome everybody to another episode of Deep DISCOG Dive. In this episode, we're going to be continuing on with Kanye West's discography, and the next album in his catalog, his 6th studio album, is Yeezus. Up to this point in Kanye's career, he was on a roll, putting out classic after classic after classic, putting out some of the best hip-hop albums of the 2000s with his first 3 projects: The College Dropout, Late Registration, and Graduation. Albums that most hip-hop fans can say are fantastic and certified classics. After those albums, we saw a little bit of a detour in 808s and Heartbreak. This album was very different at the time for Kanye and just for the hip-hop world in general, as it was a lot more pop-rap focused, a lot more singing on the album than rapping, and auto-tune. At the time that the album came out, it wasn't really well received by a lot of the hip-hop community, but now, in hindsight, it is a pretty spectacular moment in Kanye's career, as he was really ahead of the curve with the type of sounds that he was presenting on that album. And yes, while it is still a divisive album, I'm not saying that everyone just all of a sudden turned around and liked 808s and Heartbreak. There are definitely two sides there, with some people saying that it's one of the worst things he's ever put out, and then there is the other side, where I personally sit on, where I think it's actually one of the most incredible moments in his entire career. If not incredible, definitely one of the most unique and entertaining for me anyway. At the time, a lot of people thought that Kanye West was done making hip-hop music, but then he made his return, his insane return, to rap music with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which, in my personal opinion, is his best album ever. Absolutely incredible album. Critically acclaimed across the board, except maybe
not so much with me.
And some people may have asked themselves at the time, where is Kanye going to go next after such a fantastic project in the eyes of the hip-hop community, which finally brings us to Yeezus, an album that Kanye West put out in 2013, 3 years after My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And a lot of people hopping into this album, I could imagine, were wondering, is this going to live up to the hype? Because at this point, Kanye was on a winning streak. He was putting out amazing album after amazing album. Would Kanye West continue his streak with putting out creative and fantastic projects? I guess we're going to have to find out in this video. So without further ado, let's hop straight into the review. There are 10 songs on this album, and at the number 10 spot, we have I'm In It. Where do I start with this song? Except for the fact that it is one of the worst songs that Kanye has ever put out, and easily the worst on this album. Opening up this track is one of the worst verses Kanye has ever laid on a song, with references to eating ass. And this is all happening while we get these moaning sound effects over the instrumental, which are laughably bad. Speaking of the first verse, the lyrics that Kanye spits right as the beat is about to evolve are terrible. Utterly terrible. Your pussy's too good, I need to crash. Your titties, let 'em out, free at last. Thank God Almighty they free at last. I just find it incredibly disturbing how much Kanye is like worshipping this person's breasts. Also, it's just not that much of a majestic moment that requires this insane buildup. Also, of course I have to mention this, that line about eating Asian pussy, all you need is sweet and sour sauce, is going to go down as one of Kanye West's worst lines ever. Assassin's bridge and verse is okay, I like his accent, but really that's about it. The chorus here is awful, just really annoying with dull production accompanying it. Moving into the third verse, it really is up for debate whether this verse or the first verse is worse. They're both absolutely terrible though. Kanye puts out some of his most half-assed lyrics to date. Some of them, for example, are I need you home when I get off. You know I need that wet mouth. And of course we have the lyrics where he says, black girl sipping white wine, put my fist in her like a civil rights sign, and grabbed it with a slight grind and held it to the right time. I'm not gonna finish that fucking verse. We then slide back into the awful chorus, followed by a pretty atmospheric bridge from Justin Vernon. And you know, it really could have ended there, but we also get an outro from Kanye, which is completely unnecessary and just isn't even worth diving deeply into. In the number 9 spot, we have Send It Up. On this one, we get a really annoying instrumental. In my opinion, one of the worst on the entire album. album. The King Louis feature is boring and his chorus is incredibly bland. Kanye's verse isn't great either, but I did find the little club section to be kind of funny. The outro from Beanie Man is nice too, his singing is pretty good. To sum it up though, this track really does feel like filler. There isn't really much of substance here, and in my opinion, it is also the most boring song on the album. In the number 8 spot, we have I Am a God. First of all, I will say that I like the intro that is provided by Capleton, but we also have a far more boring synthetic beat than the previous two songs, which were On Sight and Black Skinhead. Kanye also feels like he is just trying way too hard here. When he says the phrase, I am a God, it feels so much like an act. The way he inflates himself comes off so fake and unconvincing, especially when compared to moments on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. We also get some of Kanye's most uninspired lyrics. The chorus on this song is such a throwaway. I am a god, so hurry up with my damn massage. In a French-ass restaurant, hurry up with my damn croissants. Also, the second verse on this song is pathetic. I just talked to Jesus. He said, what up, Yeezus? I said, shit, I'm chillin', trying to stack these millions.
Like Jesus would even care.
Also, Ye screaming on the breaks is laughable. It's like he's trying so hard to say, look at me, I can be experimental. In the end, this song is bad, and it's an example of Kanye trying way too hard to be weird. In the number 7 spot, we have Hold My Liquor. We open up with a Chief Keef feature, which is terribly auto-tuned onto the chorus, and on top of that, he is not saying anything of substance, except for the fact that he is talking about substances, alcohol, obviously, Hold My Liquor. We then get a verse from Kanye, which is so lazy and boring, with mentions to his shoe brand, and how the pussy had me dead. Yeah, it's just a really dull verse. The production is easily the most entertaining part, with its pulsating bass playing for the entire track and the rising intensity as it progresses. But once again, for the entirety of Ye's verse, it is just gutted, because plastered on top we get these awful sounding, screeching sound effects that just did not need to be there. Honestly, it ruins the rest of the beat. The only redeeming part of this track is the very end, the last leg, where nobody is performing and we're just left with the instrumental by itself. The instrumental is built onto more and more to this genuinely beautiful climax, and just when you think it can't get any better, right at the 4:24 mark, we get this meticulous sound effect that just blasts you through the universe. This section of the track is genuinely fantastic and brings me to a higher place. It's just such a shame that the rest of the song that came before it is so mediocre in comparison. And unfortunately, it really isn't enough to hold the whole thing up. In the number 6 spot, we have Blood on the Leaves. First of all, the production on this song is pretty amazing. The first verse features a pretty sample paired with some pianos, and really, it is gorgeous. It then goes on to explode in the second verse with these horns coming in. It really sounds bombastic. Unfortunately though, Ye's rapping is incredibly mediocre here. The auto-tune on his voice is 50-50. Sometimes it sounds amazing, sometimes it sounds horrible. The lyrics are just padded out with references to taking drugs, spending money, and women. It also comes off really melodramatic, especially with the awful sounding auto-tune while he yells, "We could have been somebody!" There is also a bridge right before the 4th verse that is extremely unnecessary and sounds like Kanye just stopped trying. I mean, look at these lyrics. Ultimately, this song is great in the background, despite the fact that it is very loud. It's just that Kanye's writing is so uninspired here. What a waste of a fantastic instrumental. In the number 5 spot, we have New Slaves. Similar to a song like Black Skinhead, this track takes a much more serious tone in its approach. I get what Kanye is trying to do on the first verse with the way he's trying to stand up against materialism. However, I can't take Ye seriously when he literally just made an entire album about being materialistic and how he's putting on this incredibly see-through facade. The bridge is super lazy for Kanye, and the second verse isn't all that impressive either, with Kanye yelling at certain parts. Once again, Kanye is trying too hard to be weird, and his performance is not convincing. The production isn't all that bad though. I like the heavy bass throughout and the darker feel to it, but yet again, there are a few moments that come off as so desperately wanting to be experimental. The outro to this song is pretty spectacular though, with its far more upbeat sound and Kanye auto-tuned over, and Frank Ocean's contribution is also great. In the number 4 spot, we have the intro track, On Sight. The moment you press play on this album, you immediately notice a huge change in musical style for Kanye. There's a very electric, synthetic, and experimental, or at least it tries to be, sound coming through. I do love the incredibly loud and distorted beat, but at the same time, I just cannot help but feel like Kanye just ripped off Death Grips so hard. I mean, to me, it just sounds so similar to, at the time, Death Grip's latest album, the intro track on No Love Deep Web. It's so see-through. I mean, it just sounds so similar to me. I will say though, Ye's delivery is pretty great. I do like his aggression. However, there are some terrible lyrics throughout this entire track. A few of them, for example, are, soon as I pull up and park the Benz, we get this bitch shaking like Parkinson's. One last announcement, no sports bra, let's keep it bouncing. And then the end of the first verse is so annoying. That when David Grutman kicked her out, but I got her back in and put my dick in her mouth. There is a strange sample detour halfway throughout the track that is genuinely beautiful, but the way Kanye built it up right before it happened and the way that the beat cut back in so sharply afterwards just came off so cheap. Once again, it was like Kanye was trying so hard to be weird. It's so see-through and doesn't come off genuine. It feels really fake. Overall though, I do enjoy the track, but it has some serious flaws, especially in the lyrical department. In the number 3 spot, we have Black Skinhead. On this one, we have a very tribal and aggressive beat. It does sound good, but at the same time, it kind of sounds like a Marilyn Manson instrumental. This song is a little bit more serious in tone, with its lyrics taking a more conscious route, or at least it tries to. It's just hard to take this song seriously for its subject matter, with the production splashing in these black sound effects as if we needed that to add to the topic that Kanye is trying to tackle. It becomes even harder to take seriously with some ridiculously stupid lyrics from Kanye. In the first verse, we have, they see a black man with a white woman at the top floor, they gon' come to kill King Kong. I know that there are racist white people who have this incredibly harsh stigma on interracial couples, which I think is wrong. I don't think that should be the case. I think you should love whoever you want to love, regardless of skin color or nationality or whatever. But at the same time, how is relating black people to a fucking gorilla progressive in any way? And y'all knew I had to bring this up. I mean, it's just so iconic. I keep it 300 like the Romans, 300 bitches. We're the Trojans. Not only did Kanye make the infamous mistake of relating 300 to the Romans when it should have been the Greeks, but on top of that, again, how in the fuck am I supposed to take this song seriously when Kanye, for a second, just can't resist the urge to tell you how much sex he has? Now I know, I'm being pretty harsh on this track when it comes to its lyrics, but in the end, I do really like this song for its energy, its aggressive and manic sound, but it is difficult to love when Kanye delivers such rushed lyrics. In the number 2 spot, and I'm sure you guys didn't expect this to land so highly, we have Guilt Trip. To speak on the instrumental, I think it's one of the best elements on the track. I don't think it's mind-blowing or anything, but I do really like it. We get a verse from Kanye that is very underwhelming. My favorite part about this track, and one of my favorite moments on the entire album, honestly, is the hook. Popcan's vocals, chopped and screwed the way they are, is really a huge highlight for me. It sounds like a god speaking down to me, and it's really catchy at that too. And thankfully, this takes up the majority of the song. The Kid Cudi interlude is very nice too. Cudi's singing is on point and sounds great. Definitely one of my favorite moments on the album, even though Ye is disappointing. The other artists easily make up for it though. And finally, at the number 1 spot, my favorite track on the album, Bound 2. Considering how hard the rest of this album was trying to be experimental, This is the only song on the album that to me is genuinely mind-blowing. First of all, the instrumental is one of my favorites to ever land on a Kanye track. This song comes off extremely weird and layered, but the reason it stands out in comparison to every other song on this album is that it feels genuine. Kanye doesn't feel like he's trying super hard to convince you that this song is experimental. It just is. And it's incredibly unique as well. The samples of Sweet Nothings and Bound are truly wonderful. I love the little honeys placed throughout the song. I also love the subject matter. This song comes off extremely heartwarming, even though the lyrics at times can be really dirty. I love how much love is put into this song. The lyrics on the refrain are a perfect example of that. The bridge as well is fantastic. Such a beautiful moment. I also love the lyrics where he says, "Close your eyes and let the word paint 1,000 pictures. One good girl is worth 1,000 bitches." This pure expression of love also comes with a humbling sense of vulnerability from Kanye, which is something that you never got on any of the previous songs on this album. An example being, "Hey, you remember where we first met? Okay, I don't remember where we first met, but hey, admitting is the first step. And hey, you know ain't nobody perfect." This is my favorite song on the album by a very large margin. Kanye just comes off like himself and embraces his flaws while delivering a beautiful song. Seriously, I have no issues with it whatsoever. So yeah, that has been Yeezus by Kanye West. As you can tell, this is easily, like by a huge margin, my least favorite Kanye album that we have reviewed up to this point. This to me is incredibly disappointing because usually Kanye West is ahead of the curve. He is doing things before other artists do them. Look at 808s for example. Look at My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Look at his first 3 classic albums, but with this album, Kanye is taking a step backwards. What Kanye is doing on this album is a complete 180. Normally, he's the one who sets trends. But on this album, he is so desperately chasing a trend. That trend being industrial hip-hop, which had been blowing up at the time due to people like Clipping, Death Grips, etc. Kanye West was essentially just hopping onto this industrial experimental bandwagon that had been blowing up at the time. And while that's fine in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with making experimental or industrial music, even at the height of its popularity. But when we talk about whether it was done well, in my opinion, absolutely not. When it comes to Kanye West taking these industrial sounds, he did it in such an underwhelming and such a disappointing way. When an artist makes experimental music in industrial hip-hop, you expect them to push the boundaries. And some people do say that he pushed boundaries with this album, but I have to very much disagree. Kanye West is not pushing boundaries on this album. This sound had already existed the few years before it came out. Also, on top of that, this album to me is the definition of background music. If I play this in the background, this album is fucking great. I really, really like it if I'm just listening to it casually without paying attention. But the moment I hone into the lyrics, which easily are the worst up to this point in Kanye's career, they are horrible, incredibly rushed, and lazy, backed with trend chasing, and in some cases, lazy instrumentals. Can I enjoy this album when I'm not paying attention that much? Yes, I can. But to me, that doesn't signify a good album. When I actually sit down here and I write my notes, I expect more, especially from Kanye West. I do think that this album does have its highlights though. I do think that there are tracks that are good. The tracks that I personally at least enjoy, I would say, are New Slaves, On-Site, Black Skinhead, Guilt Trip, and my absolute favorite, the track that I personally think is actually fantastic, unlike many other tracks on this album, Bound 2. So I'm pretty torn on this album. On one half, we have some of the worst songs that Kanye has ever put on an album. But on the other half, we have some pretty entertaining songs, even though a majority of them aren't mind-blowing. But I will say that even though this isn't an original sound or anything like that, and it is a very pathetic attempt from Kanye to hop onto this bandwagon, it is still a pretty unique moment in his discography, even though I will say the music is pretty underwhelming. If you're going to make an experimental industrial album, I want you to jump in with both feet. I want Kanye to take this sound and improve upon it, make it better, really push boundaries, because he didn't on this one. I'm gonna stop ripping into this album. I don't hate it. I don't think it's absolutely terrible. I don't think it's fucking atrocious. But I do think it is the most underwhelming point in Kanye's career up to this point. So in the end, when it comes to scoring this album, I am feeling a 5.5 out of 10. The lowest score I have given Kanye up to this point. It does hurt me to give this album this score because I remember before I listened to this album, I heard about the reputation that it had. And I really wanted to like it. I thought to myself, where is Kanye going to take industrial hip-hop? I want to see, is this album overhated? And in my personal opinion, no, it is not overhated. I think that this album is extremely mediocre for Kanye and very underwhelming considering what he's capable of. But anyway, that is all I had to say. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you smack the like button. If you want to stay up to date with my content, please be sure to subscribe. I'll have my last video in the corner. If you haven't checked that out already, definitely make sure to check it out. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.